Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to an very impromptu BRAP rant I have with me this evening, Game Logic. What's going on, Game Logic?
Much, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I am playing a lot of Starfield. I'm about 33 hours into the game now. Actually, considering the long ramp up, I've hit a point in the story where it's intriguing, and I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to give any spoilers away or anything like that. So, but no, I'm definitely at a point where it's it's I don't know. I guess I'm enjoying the game, but anyhow, Starfield seems to be at the center of a lot of conversations, Logic, and that's why I wanted to do this impromptu BRAP rant, because I want to talk about the we actually have some numbers regarding Starfield from Bethesda, Microsoft, and I do want to discuss fuzzy math this evening, Logic. I'm not sure if you remember that term, fuzzy math, but I think it was that maybe 20 years ago, maybe more. That was a term coined in I believe, presidential debate, if I'm not mistaken. But we're going to talk about fuzzy math because fuzzy math is being used for whatever reason to, I guess, prop Xbox up, which is weird, but anyhow. So, Logic, you and I have been talking quite a bit about Starfield, and Digital Foundry just put out this video, and almost to a T, they said many of the things that you've been saying about this game. And actually, they shared some of the sentiments that I have with Starfield too. Like I think there's some good things about this game, and I think there's some things that are not so good about this game. I think that from the PC perspective, the one thing that Digital Foundry said was the lack of FOV was something that should have been there, considering you play the game in the first person perspective, and then also not having some of the options that you have on PC, in terms of being able to have more options in terms of optimizing or adjusting certain presets with graphical fidelity, performance, things like that. So I thought it was a good video, though. I thought clearly these guys do a very in-depth analysis of the games. I think it was Alex. I forget Alex's last name. No, it's not. Oh, no, it's Alex. But I forget Alex's last name, who I think he mentioned he had been spending hours and hours, digging into this game. So I will say this, Logic. I like to. I think I'm going to end up getting the DLSS mod for this game. Because again, I'm a little bit disappointed that the game didn't come with DLSS support. So, but what were your thoughts on that particular video, Logic? Like anything else kind of resonate with you with what Digital Foundry was discussing in that particular video?
I mean, that's the bulk of it. I mean, I'm still running around doing a victory lap and spiking the football because, like I said, if you listen to the last 4 minutes, I mean, it is literally almost verbatim. Like many of the things that I've said over the last few weeks. I mean, he talks about the fact that the game is not well optimized for all hardware sets. That there are some good optimizations for AMD components, but when NVIDIA has the vast bulk of the market share with regards to GPUs, I mean, he mentions that in 2023 he kind of would expect that a major big release like this with a huge budget behind it and a large staff would have implemented every major vendor's acceleration technology, and like you said, mentioned, just like we said, I said that this thing only has 17 total toggles, switches, dials, that you can mess with in graphical settings, and that's just really a small number when you look at other PC games that are on the market, and you look at being able to toggle ambient occlusion, and other things of that nature. So, yeah, I thought there was something else that he mentioned that was something very hyper specific that I'd said, but yeah, I think that's the vast majority. I mean, people have run around bearing the flag that that this game is well optimized, and I really I mean, I'm sorry. Look, I have respect for Todd Howard as a game designer. I have respect for Todd Howard as a creative architect. I have respect for, Baldur's Gate, what Bethesda has done for gaming in general. But as should be well known, I just have an incredibly low regard for Microsoft marketing and PR in this age. Starting since last year in June, maybe a little bit before, and I'm sure he was coached on what to say. But like the Todd Howard response in the CNN video that we did optimize the game right for PC, and you may have to upgrade your PC. It's just really, really criminal. I mean, in terms of its, the openness and transparency. I would contend, and I'd be very interested to hear if Slow-Mo concurs with this or not. But I think my feeling is that if a game is well optimized for PC, that inherently means by definition that in most cases you don't need to upgrade your PC. If a game is well optimized for PC hardware, then it scales appropriately across multiple hardware sets, such that people who have high-end hardware. The problem I've seen and I've only thrown 2 hardware sets at this so far. I've thrown a AMD Ryzen 7 3800X with a AMD Radeon 6700 XT GPU at it, and I've thrown a Ryzen 5 5600X with an RTX 3070 Ti at it. And the problem that I have is, from what I've seen is, regardless of what you throw at it, it just caps out at, how it will perform. I mean, I heard, the hardware set that Slow-Mo threw at it, and he wasn't getting like an incredibly larger degree of performance than I was on 2 hardware sets, that are less powerful than his. And again, I haven't put mine on my 2 rigs with a 5950X and a 7950X, so I haven't thrown, my really heavy metal at it. But, across 3 hardware sets, that I've used and that I've heard from Slow-Mo, what seems to be the case from what I've seen is that regardless of what hardware you throw at it, you're just only going to get so much out of the engine. And that tells me that the game's not well optimized.
But according to Todd Howard, it is. you right. just have to get it. What did he say? You have to upgrade your PC or something. I forget what he said.
Yeah, I mean, the question was from that CNN had been forwarded from fans is why wasn't the game optimized for PC? And Howard's response was they did, and that you may have to upgrade your PC. And I just feel that's just. I mean, disingenuous, bordering on dishonest, and I mean, and that's the biggest nit I have with Microsoft's performance as a company. At the end of the day, I mean, sort of, kind of, maybe that can be forgiven. I mean, with 3 major console competitors, I mean, somebody's got to be third place. So I'm less bothered by the things that they sometimes fail to do or where they come up short, but I'm really bothered by the, like I said, the disingenuity and the things that border on dishonesty.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you there. I thought Todd's take was very disingenuous. And I mean, it's clearly not optimized well for PC. And Nate says the game isn't optimized at all, but a large problem is the lack of drivers right now, especially on NVIDIA. I think what Alex hit it on the head when he said, hey, look, any big AAA game should have DLSS support, should be supporting all the, I forget what they're like, DLSS and FSR2, and I forget what IBM's, or not IBM, but Intel's is
XESS. So So one thing that I want to mention. So Nate mentions, he says that the fact that NVIDIA doesn't even have a driver out by now is suspect. So just for clarity, the driver that came out, I think August 28th, was actually a package with Starfield drivers in it. Now I'm not going to say that they're great. Yeah, I'm not going to say that they're great drivers or that they're well optimized. But when you go back and look at the labeling on those drivers, because on the PC where I was going to preload, one of my checklist items, is to go and look to see if I need to upgrade drivers. And I was going to upgrade drivers, but then I realized that the ones I had already applied were Starfield drivers, so those are out. Josh asks, I'm no PC guy. Do other Microsoft first-party games have better PC options? So one, Josh, yes. Two, I'm not going to say that. I mean, so there's a spectrum of driver configuration items, right? That any game can have. A racing game and a first-person shooter are probably going to have the most, right? And so, the simple answer to your question is, do other Microsoft first-party games have better PC options? Absolutely yes, because you look at Halo, which is Halo Infinite, which is a first-person shooter, and you look at Forza Horizon and the Forza series of games. They have twice as many, at least, and it's going to be over 2 times as many graphical fidelity options for you to mess with. I'm not saying that Starfield should have 41, 42, right, hardware settings, but it should have more than 17, and there are some very critical ones that it doesn't have, such as the FOV slider, for one. I think overall, as we go through tonight and continue talking about Starfield, I'm just going to re-advertise again. For me personally, I don't do but it's a Bethesda game, so therefore, right, there's an off ramp, or there's an out, or there's a different standard, or the benchmark is different, or the rubric is like, I don't care. Like, I don't care that it's a Microsoft first party game. I don't care that it's a Bethesda game. Simple, flat out, it's a game that's on PC. People have spent $500, $1,500 to $1,500 for their CPU, motherboard, GPU, RAM. Right, I'm running this on a box with 64 gigabytes of RAM and a $600, $700, $800 video card. I have other boxes with $1,200 video cards, and I'm like, if I buy a game, I want to be able to tailor my experience more than just within 17 options.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, that was kind of that's what frustrated me about Todd Howard's comments. Like, wait, Todd, like, you do realize people have spent thousands of dollars on their rigs. And for you to say it's almost, and look, I think at that point, I've always thought someone who is spending that kind of money is a bit savvy, and so they're going to know that comment's bullshit. So, but yeah, go ahead, Logic.
No, and that's it. I mean, and again, I go back to the January 2023 showcase, right? And that's the key problem is, like, look, if you. I'm fine with you telling me that, hey, we optimize it as best as we can. The games at launch, suck it and deal with it, or don't play the game. That I'm totally fine with, and I'm more okay with. But like I've constantly referred to, like, the things that they did in the January 2023 showcase, and this instance of Todd Howard's response, I'm like, look, there's just instances where I'm listening to these responses, and they're talking to their customer base like they're stupid. And I'm like, that's, again, I mean, I've said it before. That's just offensive to me.
No, I don't disagree. By the way, Gregor Von Doob, how is my mic now? He said my mic is a bit loud. He said it's peaking. So hopefully, what's up, Ryan Landis? So hopefully that's better.
It's usually mine that's too loud. So the same thing in chat. If you guys can give me a mic check and let me know if it's too loud or too low.
Yeah. If you guys can let us know. Gregor, hopefully my mic sounds better. I'm not making your ears bleed. One of the things, look, there's a lot of chatter around, it sounds the same. Yeah, Gregor, I don't know. I adjusted it. So I don't know, man. I turned it down. Yeah. So, but there's clearly been a lot of chatter around Starfield, and one of the things that I've mentioned about my experience with this game, Logic, is that I thought that the opening sequence of the game was slow, didn't really, sink its hooks into me the way other Bethesda games have in the past. I think about Fallout 4. More recently, I have gone back and thought about other games like Skyrim. I went back and looked at the videos for the introduction of Skyrim and Elder Scrolls Oblivion, and even looked at Fallout 3 and went back as far as Fallout 2 and that, I know that Bethesda didn't make Fallout 2 as Interplay, but anyhow, so I looked at like these other games that Bethesda's made and the Elder Scrolls Morrowind. And I said this, and people were debating me on this, which is interesting because I've always said like gaming to me is art, and art is subjective, and people have different experiences. I mean, hell, I've talked to people who have played The Last of Us who don't like The Last of Us. And as hard as that is for me to believe that somebody wouldn't like The Last of Us, there are people out there that don't like The Last of Us. There are people there are people out there that like a video game called I think it's called The Devil's Third. I think it is Itagaki-san's first game outside of Team Ninja, which got blasted by media reviews. I think like it was a Metacritic 4 or something. But our good buddy Eric Jackson likes the game. He enjoys it. But and this is my frustration. And by the way, Logic, I want to preface this. For those who haven't heard a BRAP rant, the rants are conversations that we have around things that we see on social media, the dialogue that we see around, or the discourse we see around video games, things like that. So this isn't this is a little bit different than the Wednesday show. But so I'm having this conversation. I'm discussing this, and it's really interesting that people get upset that you bring that up or don't like the fact that you're offering criticism. And at the same, and it's really interesting that even though I've said there's certain things, aspects of Starfield that I enjoy, it's the mentality seems to be, and I know you and I've discussed this quite a bit, Logic, it's all or nothing. Like you either love the game or you hate the game. There's no middle ground. You can't, there's no such thing as enjoying a game and then being critical about certain aspects of the game that you enjoy. As you always say, Logic, there's people lack the ability to understand that two states of beings can coexist. Like Josh Ayer says, why are questions or critique bad? They're not bad, Josh. That's the point. But it's really odd. It's odd that somebody, and somebody that I think you had a run-in with on social media as well, was really pushing back on this idea that other people out there could have experienced Starfield and have played other Bethesda games and arrived to the conclusion that we did. That, you know what? Yeah, this game does ramp up a little bit slow. This game may not have that moment where it sinks its hooks into you from the get-go the way Oblivion did. I went back and I looked at the today I went back and looked at the Oblivion intro, and I was blown away because I remember Oblivion kind of being that big first, like, oh, this is next gen. Here we go. This is it. This is the game that's kicking off next gen. And it was a leap, from pretty significant leap from I remember from Elder Scrolls Morrowind to Oblivion. But I went back, I looked at that video, and I just remember like the king's there, he's talking, and then you get this big opening with an orchestra playing this great musical score, and you get a view of the kingdom, the castle, and then it just zooms into the jail cell where your character is, and you have to escape jail. There wasn't that experience for me, that wow factor in the beginning of Starfield for me. Like I even said to this individual, said, okay, well, if you think going down a mine shaft is a compelling experience, have at it. And that's fine if someone thinks that. I don't. But I guess what and Mario, he says, David Jaffe says the writing in Starfield is the best. That's Jaffe's opinion. He is entitled to have that opinion. I don't agree with Jaffe, just coming off of Baldur's Gate 3. I think the writing's much better there, but I wouldn't say that the writing my perspective on Starfield, I wouldn't say it's the best. I would say it's okay. But this idea, Logic, that people can't understand that others may have a different perspective on video games is unfortunate, because like I said earlier, I think art is art. I think video games as an art form, it's an art subjective. So, but that's part of the dialogue that I've been seeing around Starfield, that any criticisms levied against Starfield, you can't do that. It's bad. It's cap. You know, you're doing mental gymnastics. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because I think that if people were a little more receptive to listening to the perspectives of others and the experiences that they're having in those games, they could take something away, maybe something away valuable from that conversation, or maybe not. So Logic, you saw this conversation on Twitter today. What are your thoughts about the dialogue around people offering critique about Starfield and some of the pushback of that critique?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, I mean, the conversation on Twitter has not been a genuine gaming conversation, and that's the problem because of the things that you mentioned, right? I mean, in order to have a genuine conversation about a game, you have to be willing to talk about every single part of it. I mean, there's just some Twitter kind of sometimes amazes me. I mean, there's some very basic communicative social norms that we come to understand as adults. But not only that, you know, the number of people on Twitter that you and I often talk about that I'm like, this is a professionally employed, salaried adult, right? And I mean, it's an incredibly simple thing. So there are certain basic norms that I would just assume that everyone has gotten in the workplace, such as we're going to have a conversation about a thing, and everyone here needs to understand that nothing that we say is personal, right? That's just a very simple, basic covenant. But yet everything on Twitter about a game is taken as a personal insult. You know, and I watch those things and I'm just like, this can't be a functioning adult. You know, I mean, in agile software development, we do a thing called a retrospective. And when we do a retrospective or a postmortem, and when we do a retrospective, right, for a 2-week sprint, 3-week sprint, 4-week sprint, whatever, you know, we talk about everything that went good, not everything, but we talk about the things that went good and the things that went bad. And when we talk about the things that went bad, that covers a lot of surface area that you can't take personally, right? Because it's about how do we get the team to perform better next sprint. You know, this thing went bad. I'm not saying it, you know, you're a bad employee or you're a bad person, but this was bad. You know, and so it just kind of shocks and flabbergasts me the way people, you know, take things on Twitter and how everything is an absolute and everything's binary. And like you said, you know, if you offer a critique against a game, then
by the way, case in point right here. If you look at the screen here, Ricardo 117, Enrique, if the game is not what you want, don't play it.
So that's the problem. The game is something that I want, and I have played a lot of the game, and the game hits on a lot of drum beats that are appealing to me. I am a gamer who likes the grind. I am a gamer who likes the do loop. I am a gamer who gets stimulated by things that are very mechanical, very procedural, highly process oriented, and I'll wind up playing Starfield for a very long time. Just like I like Diablo 4, just like I like Call of Duty, just like I like Elite Dangerous, Star Citizen. A lot of these games that have this recurring grind of things that I like to develop expertise in. That, however, doesn't obviate me from being able to discuss the game critically and discuss the things that the game doesn't do well. And a comment like that person just made is the exact type of I'm going
to bring his comment back up here just to, and by the way, Ricardo, I am picking on you, by the way, because your commentary is the example in the issue that we're discussing here with the dialogue around gaming. But go ahead, Logic.
But it's also presumptive, Ricardo. You don't know BRAP and you don't know I, and you leap to the assumption that because we have a thing negative to say about the game or 15 things negative to say about the game, that we don't like it. But that's not what we said. Right?
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, this is the problem. This is where the ability for someone to say, wait a minute, like you could be like not understanding that you could be critical of things you enjoy. It's this black or white thing. Either you love it or you don't like it. There's no in between. There's no room for grays. And it's like, I've never said that I didn't like the game. Clearly, I've put in 32 hours. And I just said there are aspects of the game that I enjoy. There's aspects of the game that I do not enjoy. But there's enough there. Big shout out to your podcast on Sunday. Enough for me to keep going. You know, I mean, there is. I mean, there's enough for me to keep going in Starfield because it does enough to keep me engaged and wanting to come back. However, I'm not going to turn a blind eye to the things I don't like. Like, what kind of life is that to live? Like, Ricardo, if someone gives you a shit sandwich and it's on your favorite piece of bread, but in the middle of that bread is a large turd, are you going to say, this is the best sandwich I ever had? No, you're probably not. You're going to say, oh, this bread's great, but the thing in the middle is terrible. Like, I just don't, like, what kind of life is that to live, to have that thought process? It doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Logic. That's my, now I'm ranting officially, but go ahead.
No, I think that's right, and I mean, I think it highlights the point. You know, there's a clip going around from I hope I make sure I get the Spider-Man actor right. Tom Holland?
Tom Holland, yes.
Yeah, that I really like, and because he what he said like crystallized and framed what I get like angry about so much and trying to have a genuine gaming conversation. You know, he said, "Look, if you think you have a problem with me, don't come at me on social media, right? Text me on my cell phone, call me, and we'll work it out." And I was like, right. But then the second thing he said was the thing that really got me. He said, "And if you don't have my cell phone number, then you don't know me well enough to have a problem with me." So what's goofy about the statement that Ricardo made is, again, you're making a presumption that we don't like the game based on the fact that we have critical comments about it. You don't know us well enough to jump to that assumption. So again, stick to the matter at hand, argue the merits of your case, keep it about gaming, and stop trying to go to the gaslight tactic that you guys use and make assumptions about what we're saying. Like review, I mean, in my mind, the review scores are appropriate. The review scores are a range that has yielded the game, you know, being at 85, whatever it is, 80, somewhere between 85 and 87, depending on whether or not you're looking at Xbox or PC. That's a good range, and that's a good game. That is well in the ballpark of the type of game typically that I like to play, right? Somewhere above the 80 mark on a Metascore. So there's in my mind, there's nothing wrong with the review scores. And the review scores are, in the aggregate review scores are relatively accurate. It's an 80-something game. I have tons of games that are my favorite games of all time that are 80-something games.
I mean, one of my favorite games is a 79 Metacritic, and that's Return to Castle Wolfenstein. It's a 79 Metacritic game, but it's one of the best games I've played. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Real quick, Delirium Blades, Brian Baker says, to be fair, I may have missed a lot in the shows, but I hear more of the negatives versus the positives. Focus on the negative could be why people take that stance. No, I understand, Brian, but you know, the things that I enjoy about Fallout, or not Fallout, I'm sorry, Starfield, I can't talk about because those would be spoilers. They're very tied to the narrative. But I've also said on the show that the Ranger missions, I think I said this on Wednesday, I've certainly enjoyed doing some of those side missions. And as the main quest has progressed, there's some really interesting things there that I can't discuss. And those are the things that have really been the highlights of the game for me. But I'm also realizing that there's certain things in this game that I can talk. Well, there's certain things in this game I can talk about from a performance standpoint that aren't necessarily spoilers. So that's, for me at least, that's kind of why I talk about those things probably more often than the more positive things I like, because the positive things really are tied to the story, and I don't want to spoil anything for anyone.
I mean, the things that I like that I can talk about that aren't spoilery are I love it. I've mentioned it to BRAP, and I think I've said it. I've been on a lot of podcasts talking about this game, so I don't know like which show. I'm sure that I've said it on some show. One of the things that I love, but again, this is a hyper-specific me thing, so I don't think this applies to the entire market. I love that as a fan of science fiction and as a fan of space exploration games, that there are numerous things littered throughout Starfield that play on those strings of nostalgia. If you come, and I mentioned this on Twitter, if you come to the game with the right cultural intelligence. And so if you have had exposure to those things, then you're going to get more out of the game, I think, than a lot of people are. If you've played, a lot of games in that genre, there is a side mission that if you read all of the information that's available in the side mission, you will realize that basically it is a parallel to I was about to say the main campaign, to the plot of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which, amongst Star Trek fans, well, I'll say amongst modern day Star Trek fans tend not to like. But I've always enjoyed the movie because the movie is much closer to what the original series actually was than what everything that's come after it. Right? Lots of Star Trek fans today are starship combat, space combat, quick gratification type of fans. They're not the type of fans around the content that the original Star Trek was oriented around, which was, the original series was not a heavy action-packed show. It was very cerebral. It was very script-oriented. It was the story that came out of it was the story of humanity. And so there's a side mission in there that, like I said, as you read it, you're like, holy crap, this is Star Trek: The Motion Picture. There is a character that you meet in the game that starts talking, and then all of a sudden her script becomes verbatim the script that a certain set of NPCs would use in another sci-fi space exploration, space flight video game. And if you played that game, you will recognize it immediately when they start going. And it's hilarious, like when she's repeating it. And so those types of things, and that's kind of where I don't maybe necessarily agree with Jaffe's sentiment, but I also don't agree with the writing being just middle of the road, because when you play those side missions in that content, and again, I think a lot of it's in the side missions and not in the main campaign, I do think you get exposure to some of the writing that's a little better. It has all of the loops and hooks that I personally like. I love, anything that is, ship configuration. It doesn't necessarily have to be ship, but anything that is a highly systems engineering oriented system of systems, subsystems, configuration thing where you have to go in and you have to figure out, how do I balance power? How do I balance, armor? How do I balance, the equivalent of hit points? How do I balance a vehicle that has all of these parameters that gate all of these different metas within the game? So, I need a larger cargo hold to be able to carry more inventory so that I can haul more stuff from other planets, which also adds hit points to my ship so that I'm more survivable in combat. But then making the ship bulkier reduces my maneuverability, and so that has a negative impact when I get engaged in ship combat. But having a larger cargo hold also allows me to carry more ship repair kits, so maybe that's okay. So I personally love games that give you that provenance and give you that choice. And probably the biggest thing, and I think I've said this on the show, one of the reasons why I love this game is because and I know a lot of people haven't, if you listen to enough to keep going, what I have talked about for the last 9 years is that the games that are my favorite are the games that deliver provenance into the hands of the player. And they allow the player to exist in a world and choose to approach the game how they choose to prove it, how they choose to approach it, and then really live within the consequence fabric of those choices. I go back and I talk about one of my favorite games of all time was Sid Meier's Pirates. And that's one of my favorite games because the game, in the outset of the game, your family gets murdered or imprisoned or something like that. I can't remember. But you're not forced to go seek out vengeance for your family right away. And so I've made many runs in Sid Meier's Pirates where I just, set up camp on, at a pirate cove and just raided the Caribbean Sea for years and just moved my way up the pirate ladder. And then I would eventually go around to getting vengeance for my family. And so I loved that game because it didn't force you right, to play the game a certain way. I love this game because it delivers those choices into your hands. And the conversation I've been having with BRAP, it's like I've split my time up between doing the campaign, doing the side missions, and then the third thing that occupies maybe most of my time in the game is I'm building my outpost on Alpha Andares 4, where I've set up a small mining colony where we're mining copper. And I've bulked up I've oriented, configuring my ship and upgrading my ship around going out there and periodically grabbing tons of copper and then hauling it somewhere where I can get paid. I put a fuel generator out there. I make runs back and forth to get the materials that I need to constantly increase the base. I've put an automated turret out there. So that meta is nothing that the game forces me to do. And then and then there are other things that I've done in the game that I mentioned this to Brap too, that I will randomly choose to go up and talk to a character. And so, for instance, there's one mission that you get in Neon City, or at least that I got, where you're told to go upload a virus. You become kind of a corporate operative and engaged in corporate espionage, and you get told to go to this one company and upload a virus. Now, when I go in there, there's a person standing behind the desk. There's no label on that person. That person doesn't say anything to you that tips anything off. You can walk right by that person and go try and upload the virus. I decided that first of all, I walked into the office in broad daylight. So I was like, well, probably not a good idea to just go to a computer terminal and try and upload a virus. So I went back out to the reception area where this person was and spoke to her. Turns out that person is the CEO's daughter. Right? Which just opened up a completely other set of branch of directions for the story to go. So the reason that I've spent so much time in the game is because all of those things are presented to me. It gives me a huge problem. I've actually had to take a break from the game because it was getting addicting. I've already pulled one all-nighter, right? All of that being said, that doesn't change the fact that this game takes an incredibly long time to ramp up. It doesn't change the fact that provenance can actually be a weakness, because the way tutorials are written in this game, for whatever reason, the way it works in most other games, tutorials are event triggered. And so you get an option to say, hey, do you want tutorials or do you not want tutorials to come up? And when they come up, they typically come up because you do a thing that triggers the tutorial and says, hey, you need to do this, or this is how to do this. But in this, the tutorials are heavily coupled to the mainline campaign missions. And so if you don't go through them, you don't get taught stuff. I was never taught that there was a ship configurator or how to work the ship configurator. The only way that I knew was because it had been told to me via marketing. I was never told how ship repair parts work, or the fact that what in my mind, on every other space simulation game or space exploration game I play, they're called ship repair kits, but in Starfield, they're called ship parts. Nothing in that intuitively tipped me off to the fact that those are the things that I need to be able to repair my hull in space when I'm in the middle of a space fight. So, I mean, my point is, I love this game. I like it. It hits on things that are very hyper-specific to me, but that doesn't change the fact that there's a laundry list of discrepancies of things this game does not do well. And I'm not going to not say them or take those off the table or say, it's in Game Pass, so it doesn't bother me. Right? Just because I do like the game. I mean, the things that we like the most should be the things that we are able to have the most detailed level of discussion about.
Yeah, I wish I could have that discussion about the story, but I can't, because, like I said, you mentioned, the nod to certain works of science fiction in this game. That I'm at a point where I'm seeing that like tenfold right now. It's like, wow, okay, but but I also think like you mentioned, like the meta of filling the outposts and kind of going at your own pace. I enjoy video games slightly a little bit different. I kind of want to go through, like I heard you mention Sid Meier's Pirates, and how you kind of worked your way up before you avenge your family. I would have played that game differently. I want to avenge the family right away. I'm like, it's on. Let's go. But I only bring that up, Logic, because only to highlight that people have different preferences and perspectives on the kind of games, or metas, if you will, that they enjoy. And neither one of those things is incorrect. And the problem with the dialogue around gaming is that it's about saying to someone the way you want to experience a game, or your experience this particular game, or if you aren't praising this game, that somehow you're incorrect. Like I would never say to you, Logic, oh, you should have gone and avenged your family. You're wrong for that. I would never say that, because you enjoy different things than I do when it comes to video games. Your expectation may be different than mine. In some instances is especially in this game, I think some of the things you enjoy, I don't enjoy in Starfield. But I'm never going to say that perspective that you have is incorrect. And that's the problem. And that's what I'm seeing really with Starfield. I think Starfield's really amplified this with the dialogue around gaming, that people just don't understand that others have different preferences and want different experiences from video games. And that's okay. It's okay to have those things.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, no, I won't say what I was going to say.
Oh, you got to say it now, man.
I think
it's a rant.
Look, I mean, maybe this accusation is incorrect, but I'm going to speculate on it. I mean, this is the instance this generation where a game of this magnitude has been delivered unto the hands of a community base that has a radical sector within it that has this type of dialogue, right? That dog piles, that tries to suppress information, that tries to suppress any notion of critique. And this game has been handed to them, and they are, doing their normal behavioral pattern, right? They are flooding to any notion of critique about the game and trying to shout it down. They are trying to be dismissive. Again, they are jumping to assumptions of, the character of the person voicing the critique in an effort to discredit them or take them off, take it off the table. And so I feel like just that is one thing that is kind of hypercharging the volume and the polarization around it. And again, it's just unfortunate, because it's just weird to me, in the things that intellectually stimulate me the most, I would hope to have the most detailed, challenging conversations about them. But instead, people treat games like a political matter, and they're just like, and I know people dislike the political analogies, but sorry, you're just gonna have to deal with it. It's very much like the discussion of gun control. Like it's all or nothing. It's either they're all coming to take our guns away, or let's take all their guns away, or you just need to leave it entirely alone. And so that's the unfortunate thing, because it's, the discussion on gaming is a thing that I've come to love, and that's why I spend time in it. And yet more and more and more and more, like the larger the opportunity is to have an actual meaty, healthy, interesting, stimulating discussion about the thing, like the more the political pundits come out of the corner to make it a matter of, of right or left, or Xbox or PlayStation, and there's no room for moderation in between.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. Boycott activity, $2 super sticker. Thank you for that. Like the McDonald's PlayStation thing you got going on there. It's kind of funny. But with that being said, Logic, I do want to bring something up here. Unless you have anything else you want to add regarding the conversation around Starfield.
No, go right ahead.
But I will say this. Look, I'm 32 hours in. I like it. Again, it's not my favorite Bethesda game, but I'm enjoying where I'm at right now with the game. All right, let me just pull this up real quick, Hamp. Give me a second here. All right. Logic, man. Ooh. I don't know if you can see the screen here, but
yeah. What are the
what is happening?
What are the stages of dealing with grief?
I don't know.
I went through the 7 stages of grief. I went through the 7 stages of grief with this tweet. I it came out. I started picking it apart. I started like writing up a detailed analysis, and then I just failed out of the loop. And I was like, this is just so dumb that like I think I quote tweeted it and put two memes in it, and I was like, that's all the energy I have for this. Like the more I try and correct this, just the less interested I get in expending my gray matter on it at all. This is just 24 ways wrong. I'll let you go ahead.
Well, Starfield, look, seeing great success here. It is at hold on a second, I gotta pull up the article now. So Starfield, hold on a sec here. Just had the article up, and here we go. All right, so at more than 6 million players, Starfield is officially Bethesda's biggest game launch. According to this is article by IGN. At more than 6 million players, Starfield is officially Bethesda's game launch of all time, or biggest game launch of all time. It's a remarkable milestone for the RPG developer, not the least because it is home to established franchises like Fallout and the Elder Scrolls. So actually, the official Starfield X account or Twitter account did tweet this out 2 days ago. As of this morning, Starfield has already surpassed 6 million players, making it the biggest Bethesda game launch of all time. So congratulations to Bethesda and company. But this 6 million has now been weaponized as, and I got to be honest with you, I don't know what the fuck's happening here. This math is look, I'm surrounded by accountants on a daily basis. This math is fucking atrocious. Like and what's really disappointing, we talk about, politics. And this is like the kind of shit you see with like far right, far left, where there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, where people are putting out things to kind of stir the pot. This tweet by this particular Xbox influencer is just that. And I don't know why, and that's the other disappointing thing about the community, the gaming community, that they follow buffoons like this individual, and that they take information without seeking any, or without collaborating the information that's being presented, and not even challenging this individual. It's like, yeah, that's right. We're going to show those ponies. That's really sad. I mean, gaming's supposed to be fun. Gaming's entertainment. It's supposed to be fun. But putting out disinformation, and really this individual is just profiting off the ignorance of people that follow him. But he's ignorant himself by putting out this tweet, which is, again, just terrible math. It's just unfortunate. I really, the one thing that we if you haven't listened to BRAP, if you're new to the show, we do speak out against a lot of the disinformation or misinformation that tends to seep its way to the gaming conversation. And this is just another recent example of that. And I would hope that at some point the gaming community and content creators like this would just do better for themselves, So let me get these super chats real quick, Logic, before I get to you. Donald Brown with the $5 super chat says, "Hey, Game Logic, ask BRAP if Starfield still game of the year, and where is the review for the Pixel Fold? I still want that phone."
BRAP, is Starfield still game of the year?
No.
I told you that before.
You did tell me that, yeah. That's Baldur's Gate 3 for me. And then Mr. Grid with the $10 super chat says, "I know Microsoft isn't the only one who does it, but I don't trust any kind of sales financial numbers they release to the public, especially any kind of numbers concerning their game division." So let's talk about that real quick, Logic, because the 6 million, we talked about this on Crossfire, the 6 million, like, because Microsoft is reporting things differently than, let's say, Sony and Nintendo, what does that 6 million really mean? Or what do you think it really means?
So first of all, put on your propeller hats, strap yourselves in, because this may go for a while. So first of all, I mean, my big thing on this topic that I constantly try and convey to everyone is the way that it works, and this is I'm going to assert that this is the way that it works based on what I've seen, based on the way I have designed systems in the past. Until somebody has a positive shred of evidence to tell me that it works differently, this is what I'm going to assert is the way that it works. When you download a game, install a game, boot a game, and in the first, X number of lines of code that are executed, it gets to a point where it goes and ties your gamer tag to playing that game and starts an achievement record for you in the player database. That is the point where you become a number that counts as one of those 6 million. So if you download the game, install the game, boot the game, go through enough of the startup screen, yada yada yada, whatever, get to the point where that tie is made. At that point, if you shut the game down and never play it again, it doesn't matter because you're one body in that 6 million, right? If you choose to not believe that perspective or that paradigm, you can believe that it's after 5 minutes in or 10 minutes in or 15 minutes in. The point is that number does not tie in any way to anything, to any metric, KPI, OKR, that can legitimately, credibly be considered as indicative of long-term engagement or engagement beyond anything more than the opening of the game. And so the fact that 6 million people got motivated to get up out of their seat and download the game and install it and boot it one time, that's significant and that's relevant however far you want to take it. But it is not indicative of 6 million people staying engaged with the game beyond the 4 hour point, the 6 hour point, the 8 hour point. And that's not a pick on Microsoft. I said the same thing about the sales numbers for Elden Ring. Everybody ran around and touted the numbers for Elden Ring, and I'm like, okay, but you do realize that a chunk of those people fell off of that game and didn't stay engaged with it, right? It's that $12 billion sales number. But the difference is that regardless, that $12 billion, that 12 million number was the sales number and is indicative of revenue accrued, right? So so 6 million players engaged with the game. Now, some of those 6 million players, and this is where I'm bothered by this mess that's on the screen, is part of this that's valid is that some of those 6 million people are a subset who paid money to get early access to the game. Some of them paid in at the $100 level. That to me is significant, and that is a win. And that is an outcome of what was quite honestly I won't necessarily call it brilliant, but was a savvy business maneuver by Microsoft, right? To feed into the FOMO. And this is exemplary of like the FOMO oriented Rolling Thunder marketing campaign that we used to see from Xbox around things like Halo 2, Halo 3, right? The slow, steady drumbeat like building up to the release. And then it gets you, right, with the FOMO. And so that was well executed, and that should have been addressed and should have been considered, a upside, right, to the way this whole thing came out. The 6 million players, so to me, the 6 million players isn't insignificant, but it doesn't have the significance that some people are taking the fish hook and running it, 150 miles out to sea, trying to say, right, that it's indicative of some, huge windfall that's going into Microsoft coffers.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Logic. And I think, the one thing about this math, though, like I'm looking at this particular tweet, the math, and I think the one thing that kind of stands out for me, and by the way, thank you for breaking down the 6 million, because we talked about this on Crossfire, and people were upset that we were asking the question, and people were saying things like, oh, you just want this game to fail. Like, no, we're asking what that means. Like you said, like with Elden Ring, like, well, you said 12 million sales, whatever. We know that those are game sales. Those impact revenue. We don't know the impact of revenue, the downstream impact of Starfield, and I think it's a fair question to ask. Doesn't mean that the game's bad. Doesn't mean the Xbox is bad. We're just having a conversation about what this actually means. Yeah, I tell you, I don't think people have taken training on. There's actually training logic. I don't know if you guys do this at your work, but I know where I work, we have training quite a bit on critical thinking, thought, and asking questions.
Yeah.
I get the sense people have an exposure to that, but anyhow.
And John 907I, I've barely paid attention to some of the things you're saying in chat. So your comment. So if you've played sci-fi games in the past and are aware of the original Star Trek, you'll enjoy this game. Beautiful review. So I'm not sure if you're trying to say you agree with that or trying to throw shade about it, but it's not what I said. In fact, specifically what I said verbatim was that if you come to the game with that cultural intelligence and that background, you are likely to get more out of the game than some other people who are experiencing the game.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely didn't say what he said you said. But the one thing about the fuzzy math here is the Xbox Game Pass subscribers, 30 million. One, we don't know if it's 30 million. Times $12, 12 months equals 4.3 billion. There's some missing pieces there in that equation.
I mean, there's
one.
Tons, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one. There's no mention of a Game Pass Ultimate, which would be $14 a month. Nor is there any mention or inclusion of people who are subscribed or locked into dollar deals, or people who are on 3-month subscriptions, not paying the $12 a month. That also doesn't. There's no mention of churn, which is a thing in subscription services. There's a lot of missing. The whole tweet here. There's a lot of missing information. Things that. It's just
wrong. It's just wrong after wrong after wrong after wrong, and that's why I failed at the loop as I tried to put together a thing to address this. I mean, first of all, he's forward projecting what he expects. I forgot. What he expects Spider-Man 2 to do, and not showing his math on what his projections are. He's attributing the entirety of Game Pass revenue. This is probably the most egregious nincompoop thing in this whole thing. He's attributing the entirety of Game Pass revenue to 4 exclusives. He's not attributing loss, churn, people who unsubscribed based on Redfall, for instance. He's not attributing whether or not people engaged with Hi-Fi Rush. Like I said, he's not taking into account the actual positives of the other things that I mentioned. He's also including Forza in here, which isn't out yet. He hasn't indicated whether or not he's talking about. It's funny. He's putting this on a calendar year, right? And at the most basic grasp of accounting, you would know that calendar year for most companies doesn't mean anything. Most of them operate on fiscal years. And so the revenue accrued over these 4 games that are oriented around the calendar year is nowhere near the full tail of the tape. So, like I said, it's just broken. The $12 per month, and you said 14. It's actually now 17, right? Because if this is fiscal year, it's going to cross over Microsoft's reporting, which I think their Q4 ends in June. So it ends in Q2, calendar year Q2 is when their fiscal year ends, and so that's going to include the price bump on Game Pass, and for that matter, right, Hi-Fi Rush and Redfall were actually released in a different fiscal year than Starfield and Forza will be. So it's just like I said. I mean, this is what happens when people try to build a mathematical model that supports a pre-canned narrative and conclusion without any of the financial common sense, much less domain expertise that it would take to actually construct such an argument.
Well, I mean, this individual clearly lacks common sense, or, as you said, the domain expertise to put together a financial model like this. And again, it goes back to like it's propaganda. It's trying to stir the pot. Get that base riled up, get them excited. Fuel the console wars. It's based off of flawed information, flawed math, by the way, fuzzy math, as I called it earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't even say fuzzy math. Fuzzy math at least has some level of accuracy to it, right? At least some components of the mathematical problem are actually
this tweet is not credible whatsoever. This individual should take this down. If this individual values their reputation and values themselves as an individual, as an adult, take it down. This is bad, very bad. But go ahead, Logic.
Right. I mean, why not just start? Why not just start with, hey, 6 million people engaged with this game to some level at release. That is more than was anticipated. Some of those people paid for early access. This game has occupied the entirety of Zeitgeist over the Labor Day weekend, both in published websites. I mean, you've got Phil Spencer and Todd Howard on CNN, for God's sake. And this is one of the things, what we do on Enough to Keep Going is we talk about, we don't do Game of the Year. We have this thing called Gaming Superlatives. And one of the categories, I can't remember exactly how we phrase it, but one of the categories is, what is the game that kind of transcends the gaming community in terms of pop culture and its level of awareness. Like, so by virtue of being on CNN and the amount of volume, I mean, you're going to have people who are not gamers recognize the name of Starfield, right? Like you had a few years ago, you had non-gamers, right? Parents and stuff, knowing what Fortnite was and knowing that it was a phenomenon, that it was an impact. So there's lots of good news stories to be told about Starfield. And I fail out of the loop in understanding why this individual and other people like them don't stick to those things instead of constantly jumping off the hyperbole cliff, right? And doing things like this, calling it game of the generation, game of the decade. I mean, great Scott. I give BRAP shit for constantly talking about game of the year because the year's not over. Like, great Scott, how are people talking about game of the generation and game of the decade? When, I know. We're not even through this console generation, No,
yeah, it's crazy. And you're right. There are a lot of great things. Like I think the knock-on effect for Starfield on Xbox is very positive. You're right. They've been on big news networks. Todd Howard's, Phil Spencer. There's been a lot of conversation around this video game. I see it on YouTube. There's people talking about Starfield. I joined the Facebook Starfield community. There's a lot of chatter on that page. I mean, there's just a lot of discussion about this game. I can't recall where I've seen this level of discussion about an Xbox first party AAA exclusive. I haven't seen that in years. The marketing's been fantastic for this game. The conversation that Microsoft's been having has been great about this game. I mean, they released they did the thing with the Imagine Dragons, with I forget the name of the song. They did the collector's edition. They did the early access, which by all accounts seems to have done very well for them. I mean, this game is what we've been saying the Xbox and Microsoft has needed for some time, because we just haven't had this kind of game that has had this kind of excitement and conversation around it and marketing for quite some time. And I'm sorry, hey, Hi-Fi Rush, great game, but that's not, nobody's going to be talking about that. The way, and you look at Starfield, and it's just this conversation, and you see that they're selling jackets. There's, you see people sharing screenshots on social media about different, how they customize their ships, and we've seen people put together, I think someone actually created a version of the Millennium Falcon and Starfield, and someone actually did, I forget the Commander Shepard ship in Mass Effect. Do you remember what that ship was called, Logic? I might have to look it up.
Yeah, I had it in my head and I just lost it.
Let me look this up real quick, because someone actually created
the Nomad, isn't it?
The Nomad, yeah. Somebody actually created the Nomad. And so I think, to your point, Logic, this game's going to have legs for quite some time. I can see it as I progress more into this game, and I'm seeing kind of some of the things you described about, this ever evolving world and the meta behind, building and creating and creation and exploration in space. This game's got to have legs. People are going to talk about this game for quite some time. And I think that's what should be the focus here. Just the buzz and the excitement about Starfield, because Microsoft, the Xbox, hasn't had that with a video game in a very long time.
Yeah, and I want to give Zabot a shout out. He mentioned, God, where was this quote? No, Dad nabbit. Oh yeah, I don't know why the video game influencers are trying to be antitrust lawyers, financial analysts, tech experts. Just stick to talking about the games and things they can actually observe. The thing I commented now people are trying to be Neil deGrasse Tyson and NASA scientists because everybody was running their mouth, both Xbox people and PlayStation people, about gas giants and the reality of how those work in space. And I'm like, guys, please just, you either have things to say about the game or things, positive or negative to say about the game. I don't need a planetary, like, interstellar science lesson from people who are not experts in the domain, trying to tell me how interstellar travel and gas giants work.
You can't land on gas giants. Oh no.
And one thing I put in the chat is I said, I keep saying CNN. It was actually an aired spot on Bloomberg Technology, and I'm not sure where that aired.
Yeah. No, but again, I mean, despite the review scores, and that's the other thing, people have been so focused on the review scores that were below an 8. Like, who cares? Like, that's someone's perspective on the game. It's not going to impact your enjoyment of this game at all. And I will say this, for those people who are having conversations with me on Twitter about this game, if I ask you how many hours you've played of this game, you should provide that information, please. Because I had someone try to offer perspective, and I asked them how many hours they put in the game and what their thoughts were. Crickets. So let's stop doing that as well, because that's nonsense.
Yeah, I've mentioned it on the show before, and like Zabot is saying, look, all the people who are armchair CFOs, armchair CEOs, that's bad enough. But I'll continue to call them out right on this show. Like I just have zero time and tolerance for the fake gamers and the frauds. I mean, and they are provable. And some people, look, I'm not a person who agrees with the whole, show me your gamer tag thing, because I think that gets weaponized and taken in different directions. And there are plenty of people who don't focus on achievements and trophies and that kind of mess. But you can tell when somebody's a fake or a fraud when BRAP asks them a question like that and they can't answer up to it, right? Or they respond to every single one of your tweets with a critique of Xbox, within 30 seconds, right, with all their cronies showing up the dog pile. But then you ask them, how long have they spent with Starfield, and they can't respond to that, like, within 24 or 48 hours.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I think the gentleman who put together the bad math problem equation, I don't think that individual loves gaming. I think they love monetizing, having access to an organization like Microsoft, and they like monetizing off the ignorance of people and making money and line in their pockets. Because I don't think I really believe if you really love gaming, you don't behave in that manner. You don't make those kind of takes. You don't try to mislead people over video games. If you really love the art form of video games, in my opinion, and I don't think that individual loves gaming at all. I think Logic, and I didn't want to say this, but I think there are people out there that somehow being part of a community fills some kind of void, and they just happen to stumble upon the gaming community, but don't really appreciate the art or love of video games.
Totally agreed.
And
people should be. I've tried to refrain from saying this over the last couple weeks, but I would say people should refrain from making tweets and comments on podcasts that scream, "I'm a failure in life," because that's what a lot of the stuff I see says.
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Logic, I got to say, I can't wait to talk about the main storyline with you. I'm looking forward to that because like I said, I hit a point where I'm like, okay. So
Yeah,
I'm just interesting.
I don't know when I'm going to see it. I mean,
You just got to keep playing, man.
I've had my most fun in the game running side missions and doing what I want to do. I've started a second run tonight on Xbox. That run is discrete from my Steam run because on Steam the game doesn't acknowledge or link in any way to your gamer tag, gamer ID, which is just different. With Halo Infinite, which of course is a multiplayer game, but it's with Halo Infinite, everything is concurrent across Xbox and the Steam version. But these things will be completely separate. So, but as I start up two different campaigns, like I don't know if playing my Xbox campaign is going to definitely slow, how much I get wrapped around the axle about getting to the end of the main campaign on PC.
Yeah, and I don't blame you like not wanting to deviate from the side missions because the side missions that I've actually have experienced have been pretty good.
Oh yeah, I love this. Man, I mean, I've told you some of the stories of the side missions. I just like you just come across these people that you have some affiliation with. I mean, so
I think there's more interesting characters that you meet in the side quest than the main quest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's and I think the dialogue's better than the side missions. I think you said that earlier. But now as I'm thinking back to some of the side missions that I've had as a ranger and some of the characters that I met, like the characters are varied. They're more interesting. And it's I've definitely had a lot of fun with the side missions.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff where for people in the chat, if you watched Arrow, and you saw like the storylines where Oliver Queen, like he'd been all these things in past lives, and that gave him all these past affiliations, particularly like his affiliation with the Bratva, and you would periodically see. I mean, to me, the interesting thing about those plot lines were, when Oliver Queen would go into a situation, you didn't know if he was, going to be a Bratva captain or like these the intelligence agents or these other things, and there's very similar kind of story fabric in Starfield. Like I've walked into side missions and all of a sudden it's like, you're this person from that organization, and in that organization, we've heard of you by rep, and it has nothing to do with what your persona is like in the mainline campaign. So, and I guess now that I hit upon that, I was a little bothered by like how Sarah reacts in those situations, but now that I just made that link that it's a lot like Arrow, and like Dig would go with Oliver Queen, and Dig knew Oliver Queen as Arrow, but then he'd go in these situations and he's like Bratva, and Dig would have to play along. And now I'm kind of thinking of it in that context and realizing maybe it's not as disruptive as I thought it was. But at any rate, my point is that there are lots of similar situations like that, and you will hit those side missions, and suddenly a person will recognize you for an affiliation that you have with another group, and that will just spin the dynamic of that side mission in a different context for you. And that's kind of wonderful, kind of story space that I've enjoyed going through.
Yeah. Priscilla says, I do not like Sarah. I found Sarah to be very bland. I don't care for her.
All right, look, of all the console warring that's gone on, what's really going to come down to the discussion at the end of the year is trying to figure out the best way to say this without going over the top. Is Sarah or Shadowheart?
Oh, I didn't go with Shadowheart. I actually broke that relationship up and went with the oh my God, what's her name in Baldur's Gate 3? Hold on a second here.
Is she the orc? I don't know if she's a romance option in Baldur's Gate.
Hold on a sec here. What the hell are the characters here? Oh, Lizelle.
Yeah, isn't that's the orc or half orc, right?
I forget. Lizelle is, I don't know if she's a half orc. I don't remember, but I was romancing Shadowheart. It's funny, we had the same conversation with Cyberpunk with there was like Team Pan Am. I think everyone romanced Pan Am. Boycott says, who the hell doesn't go with Shadowheart? Oh, look, I did go with Shadowheart. She's Gith Yankee, but Lazelle's Gith Yankee. But yeah, I ended up Lizelle. Lizelle was just, I don't know, man. She was a little more aggressive, and so I just ended up,
So much so that I killed her in the early parts of the game.
You killed Lizelle?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
I guess I won't. I guess I won't be going down that particular story.
No, I guess not. Yeah. She's actually a good like in terms of like just like like a companion to bring with you in certain fights. She's actually really good. So I don't like I typically don't run with Shadowheart that much because she typically dies pretty quickly. So I usually go with Lizelle, and then I always bring what's his name, the vampire. What the hell's his name?
Asterion. Yeah, and
Yeah,
with him, I didn't let him join my party.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, no, I think he's a solid companion to have.
And Shadowheart dies for you. Are you using like all of her abilities?
I do, but I got to go back and look at how like I have her. Like maybe her armor's bad, or I don't know.
Yeah, you may not have geared her up. I have her use. She has this melee capability called the Heartstopper, where basically what she does, she when she attacks a person, she basically takes that big. She has. I mean, for my party, she has a mace, and basically she hits the person like full on in the chest, and it causes them damage, stuns them, and knocks them back.
Yeah, I don't think I had that. I don't think I had that skill set enabled with her.
Yeah. It may have been something I leveled up when she leveled up. I selected. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but with what's his name? The what's the vampire's name again?
Asterion.
With Asterion, he's got the thing where he can heal like the entire team. So, and then he's got the vampire attack where he just like attacks and like, like basically like sucks their blood and
Oh, okay.
Yeah, gets his energy and he can actually kill them. There's actually certain like enemy types that he can actually, I think the effect's called like heartbeat or something. Could be wrong, but I seen it where I enabled vampire and he just took someone out with one bite. Like literally. It's pretty bad. Boycott saying Shadowheart's my strongest party member. Yeah, it could be the way I have her set up, but she's not. Like I would say Lazelle's probably my strongest party member.
Yeah. So I just, I'm enjoying Starfield. I'm having a great time with it. Like I said, I suspect it will be, for me, it will figure in my gaming playlist the same way, EVE Online did. In a lot of games, questioning Slow-Mo about kind of, where things sat with him and having him kind of go through what he calls kind of his uninstallables, or I think that's the word I want to use, of like those games that he just like keeps installed because he loves going back to them. First of all, that just kind of altered. Like I've been super focused this year on playing games on new games coming out, and having that conversation with him just caused me to go back to, I want to spend some time like playing my favorite games, right, and things that are firmly in my wheelhouse, and going back and picking threads of those. So, I went back and played some Call of Duty Mobile this week. Started playing ranked, so I'm now apparently beating 72% of players in ranked. So I'm encountering a lot more resistance now, instead of like going into matches where it's just like me and one other person who has like the top rank in kills and score. I am seeing like, I go into matches and there's like 3 people per side. So there's 6 people in a match that are slapping cheeks, and that are, statistically separate from the other 6, but it is getting a little more sweaty in there now. And then today, I'm doing my part to support the devs, and I started playing Red Dead Redemption on PlayStation.
Nice, man. So you went out there to support the devs?
Hey, look, man, I want Rockstar to eventually finish Grand Theft Auto 6, so I thought I'd throw them some change.
That's funny, man. I thought about buying it on Switch. I may end up buying it on Switch at some point.
That's where I had originally told myself I wanted to buy it so that I could have it in portable format, but I fell down the well this afternoon. I hadn't. Funny, I mean, quite honestly, I hadn't been playing my PlayStation a lot since Starfield came out, and I was like, and I knew I was going to load Starfield on my Xbox, so I was like, I want to put something on my PlayStation 5 that's new, not new. A new release,
I haven't touched my PlayStation 5 in a long time.
Yeah, and and Josh says Eder Nights launches next week. Can't wait. The one thing I want to mention, it's September 9th. I'm still seeing games that are being announced or at least making their way, onto my radar that aren't in like a lot of lists. Like there's a Star Trek turn-based strategy game that's coming out in October. Like, and I know that's not everybody else's cup of tea, but I'm a huge turn-based. And this has been a great. I think I said it a few episodes ago, or maybe I said it on my show. Definitely, this has been a great year for turn-based strategy games. So I'm looking forward to that. And then Codemasters World Rally Championship game is coming out this year, which I hadn't anticipated. The people who had it, I think a studio with Naxxon had it and just lost the license to WRC when they put out WRC Generations last year. And I was expecting it was going to take Codemasters a year and a half to get a game out since they just got the license. But they're popping a game out in October. Codemasters, they constantly amaze me with their productivity and how quickly they get games out and get games out at high quality. If you're a racing game fan, so it's just. But the point is, it's just amazing to me that we are into September and we're still getting games announced that are coming out this holiday season.
That's wild, man. And there's still a lot of like big title releases coming up too. Mortal Kombat, I think it launches. Is that next week?
It's definitely this month. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's next week. See something here. September 14th. Yeah, next week, next Thursday.
Yeah, I was a little bugged. I saw some. I can't remember. I don't remember what, some website ran like the biggest 18 games coming out this fall. And I didn't necessarily think they were really the biggest 18 games, but like entirely off the list was Forza. I'm like, look, you can be salty about Forza. I'm salty about Forza, but like you can't just leave them off the list of games, of big games, big titles coming out this fall.
Man. Yeah, I don't think you can. I mean, that's a pretty big one, in my opinion. Also, the Cyberpunk DLC is coming out soon. See, that's the other thing. I'm going to end up going back to Cyberpunk. Look, as much as a shit show as much as the release of Cyberpunk was a shit show, I will say this. I mean, they have done a lot to fix the game, as they should have. And I'm really interested to see what this DLC is going to be like. It looks very interesting. Now, did you play Cyberpunk, Logic? I don't know if have you played it?
I didn't, and I have been thinking that maybe for the longest time I just kept going back to it and looking at the Steam user reviews, and I was like, okay, when the Steam user reviews get to 80%, then I'm in. And by the time they hit 80, we were fairly close to the DLC coming out, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna jump on board with the DLC, but like now there's just too much stuff. I don't think I'm gonna have time to get back to it. So maybe it's gonna be a holiday break kind of game. Maybe, I don't know. We got Assassin's Creed Mirage, Forza Motorsport, Alan Wake 2, Spider-Man 2. Not my cup of tea, but Super Mario Brothers Wonder is coming out. The Metal Gear Solid Collection is still coming out for people who want to revisit that. We got the new Call of Duty coming out. Oh, this was the other Mario game you were talking about, which I didn't even recognize. So they're doing Super Mario Brothers Wonder and Super Mario RPG. We got the Avatar game coming out.
Yeah.
which actually I'm
Is the Avatar game come out this year?
It is. I thought it was like it's a December 7th release.
Oh wow, okay, yeah, I wasn't aware.
Which just it says something about Ubisoft and what they're thinking, and this is either like a super flex of like, well, I just don't give a shit about the Game Awards. Like, this game's going to sell big numbers, and I could care less about Jeff Keighley, right? For them to put it out December 7th. But I mean, what I saw of that game and like all the, to me, it's very much, and again, Ubisoft gets a lot of flack. Look, I love my Far Cry and my Ghost Recons, and this seemed like an Avatar game that encompasses all of those types of things that I love about those games. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Helldivers 2 comes out as well. That's coming out. Oh, there's just a lot of games coming out, man. 2023 stacked. And we talked about the Cyberpunk DLC. That is something that I may end up pushing back until like later this year. Might be like a holiday type game, because there's just too much. I got to get back to Jedi Survivor because of the patch that they released. Seems like it's addressed a lot of the issues that game had. DeFloyd said Lives of P next week. I won't be playing that, but that could be something that gets pushed back to maybe holiday, or when there's a downtime early next year. I'll probably dive into that. Just a lot of games, a lot of stuff coming out.
It is. Lives of P isn't a thing for me. It'll be interested to see how that plays on the market. Wild Wolf says, is the game completely fixed? And I personally just don't know. I have the game on PlayStation 5, and I just haven't had a chance to go back and revisit to see if it plays better now.
Yeah, they did add DLSS to the PC version, so that's great. I'm excited about that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
City Skylines, for people who are in that type of game, is City Skylines 2 is actually going to figure as a big release. That game's pretty popular.
Let me tell you something, man. Like I spent you talk about like doing all-nighters. I used to do that with SimCity. Like, I was hooked. It wasn't good. I can't do that. I can't do that anymore. It's not good. Same thing with Age of Empires. That was another game. So, all right, Logic, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this BRAP rant, but I want to give a big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this evening. This was a very impromptu, last-minute BRAP rant, but I always appreciate the support. Please hit that like button. If you're new, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. Logic, any other closing thoughts, anything else you might want to wrap up before we say goodbye to our guest in the live chat?
The only other thing I want to mention on that tail end piece that we were just talking about, the other thing that's interesting about this year is, despite all of the stuff that we see coming out, I know that there have been some onesie-twosie pushbacks, but normally, even when the gaming year isn't as stacked as it is, in this time frame, we start hearing about all the games that start piling up in this. Is it going to make it holiday season? It's out Q1 2024, right? We get this big pile up in the February-March time frame. We got that in, that was part of what we saw in 2017. There was another year recently that we said, and actually I said, look, the last time people said this was going to happen in 2017, the only thing that came out Q1 of that calendar year was Horizon Zero Dawn and Breath of the Wild. And all of those other games that said that they were delaying in 2016 to come out Q1 2017, they all got pushed into holiday 2017. But whatever year that was that I talked about in most recent times, those games did actually come out. But we don't have a lot of people delaying. And the ones that are delaying, they're delaying because they're saying the holiday season is too full. Normally what we hear in this time frame is the game's not going to make it, right? Just because it needs more time to bake. We need additional time to polish. We're not hearing a lot of that, at least not right now. So, it's just pretty amazing and pretty atypical for the gaming year this year.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a great point. So, all right. Thank you again, everyone, for hanging out with us this evening. Really appreciate the support as always. Again, smash that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live, and have a great weekend, everyone. Have fun playing video games. Have fun playing Starfield if you're playing Starfield. We'll catch you next time.